Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to share with you my reading wrap up for April. April was Magical Readathon month, so I did do quite a bit of reading for my Necromancer calling, and so I have finished quite a few books and I'm excited to talk to you about them. Before we get into the individual book reviews, however, I would like to talk about some stats that have to do with my goal of keeping my TBR number reasonable. Now, whether that is going well, we will discuss in a second, so let's look at those numbers. As a little reminder, I started out the year with 23 books on my TBR, and now I had my birthday and there were some sales going on, so that number went up a little bit in the first few months. So I started out April with 33 books on the TBR. We had gone up and then down a little bit again, and I was very determined to continue that downward trend. In April, I managed to finish 10 books, so we were doing quite well on that front. And I also bought 11 books. And so we were not doing great on that front. I unfortunately had a little sale incident with Libro.fm again. They do have their big sale in April every year. So I did buy some books there, and then I had to buy some books for the Magical Readathon to read. And yeah, overall, we just did quite a bit of book buying in April. And then I also borrowed one book from the library. Now there's one last number to consider, and that is that one of the 10 books I read in April was a reread, so this one technically did not reduce the TBR. Now if we take this all together, we have 10 books read, 11 books bought, 1 book borrowed, and 1 reread. I have sadly put 3 more books onto my TBR in the end, so we are leaving April with 36 books on the TBR. So I did not continue with my downward trend. However, I did still manage to finish a few books of the TBR. So even though I did that very unplanned 5-book audiobook haul from Libro.fm, I only added 3 books in the end, if you know, as a net number. So am I proud of this? Not really, but I hope that the books I picked up will be absolute bangers, and so I'm also not mad about it. So now we have looked at the set numbers, let's discuss the books that I managed to read. As we have 10 to go through, I will try to keep it concise. The first book I finished in April was Made by Ali Hazelwood. This is a, like a fantasy romance. I never know, paranormal romance, whatever. Like those genres, I don't know them. I had read Pride for Magical Readathon a while ago, and so because I had a prompt that I couldn't really fill with anything else and I had made available through my library, I decided to read this one as well. I had enjoyed Pride. I gave that one 4 stars when I read it, and I was hoping that Made would continue on with the same things that I enjoyed about Pride. However, because we have a new couple, we have new main characters, we are in a different part of the world, we are not looking at the vampires anymore. Unfortunately, this book did not work for me. Now in this book, we are following the childhood friend of the main character of the first book. She is a human werewolf hybrid, which is something that people didn't believe could exist, and though there's a lot of like attention on her, but also certain people feel kind of threatened by her existence, and so they want to take her out so that people kind of forget that humans and werewolves could technically have offspring together. Our main character has already met her mate, who is the alpha in a different pack from the first book, and he doesn't really want to have anything to do with her. He tells her that the whole mate thing is just like some biology and he's not really interested in pursuing anything with her. However, because she is his mate, he's still trying to take care of her and protect her, and so they are kind of forced to work together. We do have kind of 2 plots going on. One that starts out the book and seems quite exciting, but then completely disappears throughout the book. book and never really is interesting again or like important again. And then we have a second plot that is basically just there to create a common enemy for the main couple so that they will have to work together. And with that one, I felt like there was so much there that you could have explored in a meaningful way, but it was never done, and that was kind of sad. Now, the main character has suffered through a lot of trauma, and the way she deals with it is that she is basically very flippant about it, which got on my nerves quite a bit, to be honest. It's just something that, if you do it to an extreme, it gets a little bit annoying for me personally, but that could be completely different for you. The male main character, I couldn't care less. Like the whole like alpha male stereotype thing is just not interesting to me in a man at all. And the like smut stuff in this book was strange. It was strange. Like, I don't mind a little bit of wolfiness, like, if you need that, whatever. That's not what I go into these books for anyway, but in this one, it felt off. The author still tried to make it okay, but it still felt off to me. So in the end, I gave this one 3 stars, and yeah, I'm not gonna read more Ali Hazelwood, I'm not gonna lie. Then the next book I finished was my audiobook, The Dragon Keeper by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Rainwild Chronicles, which is the 4th series in the realm of the Elderling, so I can't really talk a lot about that here. In this series, we are following an area of the world called the Rainwilds. There are some dragons there, and they need people to take care of the dragons and kind of move them through the jungle to find a lost city. And we are following 2 women who are the dragon keepers. We have Thymara, who grew up in the Rainwilds, and she is marked, and because of that, she's discriminated against in her own society. And then we have Alice, who is from Bingtown, and she's in a very unhappy marriage, and she is trying to find some freedom and, just live her own life for a little while, and so she's traveling with the dragons. Now, this first book was really only set up. There's nothing much happening in that book. We learn about the characters, we learn about the dragons, and that's pretty much it. It just stops. So I have started the second book now, and so I hope that there will be a little bit more action in this one, like actually stuff happening. But I still enjoyed that first book. I think that these characters are quite interesting, and I'm intrigued to see what Robin Hobb will do with it. Now, this book does have quite a lot of ableism in it, so keep that in mind. And there is some discrimination of certain people. We do have some sexism in it and violence in a relationship, and we do have queer characters in this one as well, but not in a very happy way, at least in this first book. So I am intrigued to see where we will go with all of this, but we have 3 more books to explore, so I try to trust Robin Hobb that she's doing something good with this. Then we entered the Read It Short Readathon. My friend Cleo hosts on her channel Bemused Bookworm, and for that I did finish 3 books. The first one of those was Madonna in a Fur Coat by Sabahattin Ali. This is a classic, a kind of modern classic, Turkish classic, and we are looking at a love story in the 1920s in Berlin, but we are getting told the story from the perspective of more like the 1940s or 50s in Turkey. And I really enjoyed this book. I think it's just so interesting to read classics like this because storytelling today is so different, and with this one especially, it takes such a long time to actually get to the main stories in the 1920s. You learn so much about like other characters before that because you then kind of meet the person who is telling that story in a way. But yeah, I had a good time with this one. It was definitely an interesting look at, just like the history of Turkey as well, because that's not something I'm like super familiar with. And I think this author is very interesting because he was more of a radical person, and I would be interested to read more of his books. I gave this one 4 stars. Then I did a quick little reread of Cheese Sweet Home Volume 3. This one is just a manga series about a small cat that gets adopted by a Japanese family. It's lovely. I'm doing a reread throughout the whole year. to finally read the last volumes of this. And yeah, I think this is one of my favorite volumes in general. I gave this one 4 stars as well because it is a little bit more emotional and touching, because the family that adopts She, they're not actually allowed to have a cat. So in this one, they are going back and forth thinking about whether they want to move like their flat so they are allowed to have a cat, or whether they would give Chi away. And then last but not least, for that readathon weekend, I read a German book called Nicht falsch, neurodivergent by Charlotte Suhr. This is a book about neurodivergency, and the author is an ADHD person. So she has autism and ADHD, and it's about how she got diagnosed late. Like, I think she got the ADHD diagnosis in her late 20s and the autism diagnosis in her early 30s. And she's kind of looking back on her life and also this whole process and what it means to her life and all of that. I thought it was very interesting, parts of that very relatable. I had a very good time reading this one, and it is quite short, so I think it is nice for people who want to start learning about this topic. So I gave this one 4 stars as well. The next book I finished was a thriller, and that is Monday Mourning by Katie Reichs. Now, I think this is the 7th book in the Temperance Brennan series. This is the series that the TV show Bones is based on. However, it is very, very different. The only thing really that is in common between the two is the name of the main character and her job. I really enjoy these books. They start in the 90s, so you have to like be a little bit lenient with some stuff. And again, in this book, I had a few things that I just found very weird and off-putting. Like, there were some mentions of the Holocaust in here that made no sense to me, for example. However, I do really like the scientific approach to the thriller. So in this one, our main character, Temperance Brennan, she is back in Montreal. She works there and then also in South Carolina. So the books do have different settings. This one is also set during the Christmas period, so it was a bit weird to read about like all that snow and cold, but yeah, just so you know. And then we have a case where there are bones found in the cellar of a pizza parlor, and the question is whether this is more like an archaeological find or whether this is an actual crime scene. And Temperance Brennan is very sure that this is like crime, but the police doesn't really believe it, and so she's trying to convince them that this is not just like old bones that they found. There were just some things I didn't really love particularly about this book. I still gave it 4 stars because, as I said, overall I really enjoy the series. I feel like this was one of the cases where the actual science was very much in the background, and I like the books where it is more important to the story. Then the next book I finished was The Just City by Jo Walton. This is the first book in the Tassily series, and this is a book that I had on my wishlist for many years, and then I found this copy last year in a used bookstore in Berlin. Now, I picked it up. I didn't really know too much about it, but this is a fantasy book that imagines that the Greek goddess Athena is trying to build a place in the folds of history to try out Plato's Republic. And in this one, we follow multiple characters. We follow the god Apollo, who decides to be born as a human to take part in this experiment. We follow a woman from Britain in like the 1900s or something, or like the 1800s, and she is brought there as someone who's very well read in philosophy and especially in Plato, and so she is supposed to be one of the masters teaching the children. And then we follow one of the children as well, who is brought she's basically bought as a slave and then brought to the city to be taught and to be one of the future citizens of this republic. Now, this book is quite a lot. Like, you have this whole like fantasy sci-fi element of the time travel, that Athena is just collecting people from all over history to come to this one island that will one day be destroyed and will kind of be the myth of Atlantis. And you have a lot of like yeah, philosophical thoughts about this theory, about this idea of the republic. And then you have like the real world, like humans be humans kind of situation, and how that all fits together. So there is a lot of like content warnings for this book. This was really crazy. It definitely gave me some nightmares as well. Which, yeah, this is not a horror book, you know what I mean? So yeah, in general, I would really, really recommend this book, but make sure you look up this a little bit before you go in, because it's hard. There's a lot of like dark stuff in this book. And now I really need to find the sequels, which is basically impossible in Germany, so I don't know what to do. But yeah, this was quite a lot. I gave this one 4.5 stars, and yeah, highly recommend. You need to try Jo Walton. She's so great. Then the next book I finished was another audiobook, and that is A Stage Set for Villains by Shannon J. Spann. This is a fantasy book. I would consider this more new adult without smut. I think it is classified as YA, but like definitely like older YA. It is quite a violent book as well. In this one, we follow a world where there had been gods, but the gods are gone, and instead they now have something called players. And this is very much inspired by like theater, and the players are basically immortal beings that play on a stage, and they have this theater where people go, and it will just kind of like take over their whole life. They will become addicted to it in a way. And we do have a main character who's from the north of this world, and in that part of the world they protect themselves against the players with a mark. They have this like gold material that is dangerous to the players, and so they use that to protect themselves. But when our main character is still a child and she is about to be marked with this gold thing, she gets attacked by a player and basically cursed by that player. And so she has been miserable for like 10 years of her life now, and that is when they do a call to find a new player. And because of like circumstances, she actually ends up in the competition. Now, this is not necessarily a competition book. You do have the competition, but it's not that important. It's more about her like being in the theater and then starting to figure things out. Now, I must say this is a debut, and it is pretty wild. Like, the imagination of this author is amazing, and I can't wait to read more from this author. I feel like because this is a debut, this was still a little bit messy, and not in the good way, especially during the middle part of the book. So I would still recommend you go read it, but just adjust your expectations a little bit. But I would say like the imagination definitely cancels out the like lack of structure in the storytelling. And as I said, like I can't wait to see what this author will do next, because yeah, this was so impressive for a debut. And I gave this one 4 stars. And then the next book I finished was also my next audiobook, and that was The Poet Empress. Again, this is a fantasy story and a debut, and this one was just mind-blowing. This book is compared to She Who Became the Sun, which is one of my favorite duologies of all time, if not my favorite. And those books are so violent, cruel, so much political maneuvering. I absolutely ate it up. So I was very, very excited to read The Poet Empress because of that comparison. And I think it holds up. It was a phenomenal read if you like those political books that are also super, super violent. And unfortunately, I do like that. This is a book where we follow a young girl who is born to farmers. They live in a famine, so they're very poor. They don't have food. And then she hears that they are looking for concubines for the next emperor. And she signs up for it. And against all the odds, she actually gets chosen for this competition. Again, this is not a competition book, but there is a little bit of a competition in it. But it is way more about like what happens afterwards, like when she's actually at the palace as a concubine. And this book is a lot. It's very violent. There is a ton of content warnings for this one. Very, very dark. There's torture in this. There is sexual violence in this. It's like, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. And I would say, go in knowing that. But I had a very good time reading this. And there were moments at the end, like I listened to the end of this book while I was grocery shopping and I was literally tearing up. I'm so glad I didn't forget to buy like half of the things on my list just because I was so taken up with the audiobook. But yeah, it was a lot, and it was amazing. And I gave this one 4.5 stars. I cannot wait to see what this author will write next. That will be an auto buy for me. This is also very much a story about childhood trauma and especially the political machinations that are done in a dynasty with actual children. So again, keep the content warnings in mind. And then the last book I finished was The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. And again, content warnings, very dark, very violent. There's torture in here. There's so much in here. This is like one of the darkest like histories in the US. This is about a reform school that is inspired by that very infamous one that was in Florida. The author Tananarive Due had a great uncle who actually passed away there in the 30s, and she talks a little bit about that in the author's note as well. So she does have this personal connection to it as well. But the story is completely fictional. I really like that she took her great uncle's name for the story. So we're following a character called Robert Stevens, and even though it's a completely fictional character, it's still kind of like, it's like an ode to what happened to him. Like, I don't know how to put it into English, I'm sorry. But yeah, this was a very harrowing read because of the topic matter. It's like, racist South, it's segregation, it is violence against boys. It is very, very sad and terrible, the racism that is still so much the base of what is happening in the US today. Just, a couple of days ago with the Supreme Court and the Voting Rights Act, can see the racism is still so much at work in these areas. And so, yeah, it was definitely a hard read, but for the length, I was surprised that it was easier to get through than I had thought. Like, I have been a little bit scared about this book, but it was really, really good. And yeah, you just learn about the really terrible history of this place. And I have read The Nickel Boys before, so this was something I was familiar with. And I think because of that, some of the shocks weren't shocking so much to me. I think that The Nickel Boys is an even harsher look at this whole situation. I think in this one, because we do have the whole ghost story, it adds a little bit of like intrigue and almost adventure, even though that feels like the wrong word. But you have something that the main character is going for, that he's trying to achieve, and because of that, there's always this forward trajectory that it doesn't really go with the actual history of these places. Like the kids who were in there, they didn't really have anything to keep them going. Like, yeah, it's just terrible and horrible. And a lot of like the terror of this book is not happening to the main character directly, so I think it is a little bit easier to consume. We also follow his sister Gloria as she's trying to get him out, and through that we do see some historical facts as well, which I thought was really well done. And just, yeah, in general, this was a great read. 4.5 stars, would highly recommend, especially in combination with The Nickel Boys as well. And there you have it. These were the 10 books that I finished in April. I hope that May will be just as good a reading month for me. I have some books that I'm really, really looking forward to, so we'll see about that. I would love to hear, did you participate in Magical Readathon? What did you read? What was your favorite book of April? Please leave that in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like as well. That always helps me out, and you can subscribe if you want to hear more from me. And I'll talk to you very soon. Bye!